All right, everybody, welcome back here. First step, I'm going to tell you how to pronounce this guy's name because I just figured it out. People call him Dr. Caspar because that's where they kind of stop in understanding what to say next. It's Schultz, just so you know, Dr. Caspar Schultz. Now, a lot of you have met and heard of him before from various podcasts, etc., but needed to poke a little fun at the Polish heritage there. So, welcome for being with us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Cash. Great to speak to you again. And just to clarify, and I actually want to write a book on
Yeah.
this. The doctor is my father. I'm not the
Ah, yeah,
doctor.
yeah.
I am just
Yeah, yeah.
Casper.
You're the healer. You're the guy that's out there fixing everything.
I'm the entrepreneur behind it all that's just traveled the world thinking he was a doctor when it was really my father the whole time.
Amazing. It's part of your legacy. And that's where, the work you've been doing in integrative medicine, some people don't even know what that is. So we can start there, but you've been really innovating. I love watching what you're doing online. I get excited when I'm scrolling through Instagram and I see one of your posts because I always learn something, and then the world is learning from you. So break that down first, maybe for people that don't know, what is integrative medicine?
Yeah, it's a good question because I feel like it's one of those things like alternative medicine, integrative. These are just words to people. We
Yeah.
don't really define them and we just allow perception to go about it. Like a lot of people, alternative has, I think, almost a negative
Yeah.
connotation. It's sort of like, oh, they're like erectile dysfunction pills, but natural. It's like, no, no, no. That has nothing to do with it. But I think when you talk about what integrative medicine is, I always like to look at it as, all right, what is out there in the spectrum of therapeutic options? We know very well we have conventional medicine, which is pharmaceuticals, it is surgery. It is more of a physical approach that you find in most hospitals and most places you go to. When you look beyond that, you could look at things like psychology, a whole different branch of looking at the mind, looking at the psycho-emotional portions. You could find things like European biological medicine, which came out of Europe. That's a little bit more herbal. You find homeopathics there and everything else. You have this push even for, let's say, Eastern medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda,
Yeah.
all sorts of great things that came out of there from ancient times till now. And then you have this other side of more functional medicine that is the IV drips, looking at nutrition, functional lab analysis, utilizing all sorts of compounds and things. And what integrative medicine should be, and I'm saying should because it also gets into the kind of specialization that medicine loves to do. Integrative medicine should be the comprehensive approach of utilizing all of
Mm.
that to help the patient then recover their health by addressing all root causes. So in all reality, I always looked at it. I don't know about you, I'm a fan of
Yeah.
MMA. And I remember, when UFC was kind of different fight styles. You had the Gracies with the
Right.
jujitsu, you had some of the kind of brawlers, you had the wrestlers, and they all and over time, it became this like specialty versus specialty to you had to be truly
Yeah.
mixed. You had to know it all. The GSPs of the world, all the top guys had to know everything. They are world class wrestlers, grapplers, Muay Thai, all of it. And that's what I see medicine needs to become. And integrative medicine, as I see it, is that combination of all therapeutic options put on the table, basically, or around the table, put the patient in the middle and say, all right, out of everything we have in our toolkit, ranging from surgery to spiritual practices to shamanic stuff, meaning that's the spectrum there. What can we utilize in a very personalized way to help this patient recover their health? Not just manage their disease, which conventional medicine has done a very good job at managing with the, symptom suppression, but really I think in integrative medicine it's uncovering what are the tools and the solutions to then completely regain your health even in the face of things that are so-called incurable.
To me, listening to that, it sounds like you should be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize because that's like
you know
this is what medicine is supposed to be.
I don't know about that. Right, but in all honesty, Cash, it's just taking what's already out
Yeah.
there and just basically saying, all right, how do we utilize kind of all of it instead of just looking at little slivers at a time? Because we know the human body is incredibly complex. There's so many different facets, and what leads to a disease is incredibly unique to that person. So you can't just show up and have a great toolkit to fix a home, basically, where you don't know what's going on and only bring a
Mm.
hammer. You got to bring all the things, and you got to start to utilize, all right, what is it going on in this house that needs to be fixed, and what tools really are best to do that. So I think it's kind of the logical way of where things are going to go. And in the beautiful thing of it is, like, you're not trying to create anything brand new. The tools are out there in a sense, and they're always dynamic, and things like DNA testing are part of that
Right.
toolkit, but it's just trying to combine them together in this logical way.
And when I've heard you talk about this before, and what you talked about right now was sort of the solution side. It's from pills to meditation to whatever it could be, right? But you're also integrating how you're approaching the problem. It's not just the body, it's also the mind, it's the spirit. Like, you need to heal all of it in order for things to actually get you over the finish line.
Yeah. I mean, we are not just mechanical beings with just bodies, right? We have emotions that must be addressed, traumas, all these other things that can cascade into the biochemical side
Hmm.
of things. We know this through PNEI, HPA axis, all these things that, now we study in science and are able to connect the dots. But beyond that as well, I do think a large portion of that is the spiritual side, which has nothing to do with religion, has more about
Mm.
purpose, has more about that connection with things, more of that higher feeling and a consciousness level to things. So if you don't address all three, body, mind, and spirit, you're missing out on what healing actually requires. It requires, because we are all three of those things. So yeah, it's going beyond what a lot of doctors are trained to look at only the biochemical and being able to address those at the same time, right? We're not like, go see your
Yeah.
psychologist. My mother is a psychologist. She works with my father, who's a physician. And they worked together, and we built a team around them in a sense and kept going from there, because it made sense. You can't just say, oh, go see your psychologist, then come back, I'll put you on the pills, do this and that. You got to work
Yeah.
together, not separately. It has to be a collaboration.
That's cool. So that somebody coming in, I'm just picturing this, like, how do you convince the patient coming in saying this hurts, this is broken, that we need to work on your spirit? Or is it more like they've been failed by medicine, that they're craving that word alternative answer?
Yeah, I think the kind of journey of almost every patient that ends up with us is a long one. It
Yeah.
doesn't start normally with us. Sometimes we do have that where people are just, listen, recommended to us because someone came out after having a long journey and got better. So sometimes they go there, but most people are set in the belief that conventional medicine will be able to give them an answer. You have a problem, you go to your GP or general practitioner, or you go to hospital or something like that, and that's where your journey begins. And usually, when the GP or someone in conventional can't, you go to the next specialist. They say, oh, it must be something else. Go to the gastroenterologist. Oh, it might be neurological. Go to the neurologist. You get passed around for a while. You might get a little bit frustrated
Mm.
by that if you're not truly getting better over time and actually getting worse. And then you shift into maybe a little bit more alternative, where you go to a chiropractor, an
Hmm.
acupuncturist, and maybe that provides you with a little bit of help. But again, to me, those are the specialties outside of conventional medicine. And sooner or later, you do sort of hear about this, maybe through your searches and everything. Listen, it's not cheap, it's not inexpensive, it's not covered by insurance. So I understand the limitations somewhat of where it is right now, and how it's practiced. But you end up and you start to see, wow, this does make some sense. Most people say, after going through everything, that, hey, that failed me, just doing this failed me, this failed me, this failed me. This starts to make sense of addressing it all at once and really going after it with a truly tailored and comprehensive way of doing it, where we have over 100 therapies here in our clinic that we're providing to the patient through the doctors and the analysis in a very specific way.
Yeah, and that concept of price point, we do hear this. People are like, well, I can't afford it, or it's costly, or that common phrase of, does my insurance cover this, or the question. And the concept of what is cheap and not cheap, well, it's a lot more expensive to let something progress and get worse through the means of, here's what my insurance covers, which is very limited in terms of preventing, and then deal with it when it's a full blown chronic condition and you're spending your last 10 years in a hospital bed. Your life savings is probably being bled out, paying for those services. I spoke to this lady about 3 days ago who has a kidney stone, and it got pretty. She was meant to pass it, and she wasn't able to. One night in the hospital, $40,000 bill. I don't even know how you come up with that number, but So
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
the thinking of it's expensive. No, the maintenance of the cost of this thing breaking down eventually in a chronic disease, you don't want to even know what those numbers are, right? So you mentioned there's
Yeah.
over 100 treatments. I've seen things that you've put online and some of the stuff you're doing, and there's some really cool stuff that are out in sort of biohacking world that you brought into medicine, and some of them I don't even understand, but they look cool. So maybe you can tell us. For example, I saw you recently posted this machine. I think it's called a biocharger, where there's like these sparks flying from the top, and it's frequency based, I'm assuming. So what's going on with that?
Yeah, biocharger, like a lot of things here, we've had for a long time, and I know Jim and Jim, the owners over there, biocharger, great guys that kind of created it. One of is actually a protege of Nikola
Oh,
Tesla,
cool.
so like one off of there. But someone studied with Nikola Tesla, he studied with that person and put it together because there is a Tesla coil in it. When you start to really look at a lot of the initiation points of disease, you start to understand, number one, like the idea of like, yeah, we're spiritual beings, but even more so, if you wanted to go into true science, we are
Mm,
energetic beings. We start with energy. Everything is atoms and everything like that. And a lot of where we create the problems is starts on an energetic level. We even know this because you could send astronauts into space, but if you don't have a Schumann wave generator, and Schumann waves are the frequencies that Earth
mm,
emits, you'll start to actually degenerate. You'll start to lose muscle mass. You'll start, So if we're ever thinking about like cosmic travel beyond even the moon and other places, we'd of course need a Schumann wave generator. But a lot of us are cut off from those things on a daily basis, whether it's in the buildings we've created, or just not connecting with nature or anything like that. We start to lose some of that resonance, and our cells don't regenerate as well. We may have some cellular functions that don't work properly anymore because of that. So what these machines do is basically put you back in those frequencies that your cells then can use to regenerate, to work and function properly. In a way, it's kind of like giving you instructions to those
mm,
cells that have kind of gotten lost, aren't functioning the way they should. And how do we do that? So there's a number of ways, and one of those is something like a biocharger that emits different frequencies with a Tesla coil with different noble gases within it that, when charged, look really cool because it's like shining and bright, and it is giving off sparks at the top. So, I mean, it's Instagram worthy, number one, but it actually does work. And when you speak with patients, they tell you they feel a little bit like their words are usually a little bit more grounded, a little bit more
right.
charged, right? And again, these are things that you hear across the board when you utilize things like lights, which is just
Mm,
energy. So, red light therapy. A lot of people lay in red light beds that look like tanning beds
mm-hmm.
now. It's just different red and usually infrared lights that are pulsing sometimes, that give off different frequencies a little bit, as well as strengths, and you come out of that and you're charging the mitochondria. This isn't something that is woo woo. This isn't just saying, oh, energy medicine is just acupuncture and an old way of looking at things. No, no, no. You're actually showing that these frequencies are penetrating into the body, stimulating mitochondria, causing the cell to have more energy. Then it's expelling all the waste that maybe it didn't do because it didn't have the energy, and suddenly you have better functioning. You're getting rid of that. Everything is working properly. So so much of what we do is on that level
Mm,
as well. Yes, we have tons of IVs and injections and procedures, and we don't negate conventional medicine. If you require that, if that's something you need, great. But most of the time, people have already gone down that route. They've used all the pill. They're on lots of pills actually, and their body isn't functioning, and they need the pills. We're trying to get you off of that, and part of that has to do with looking at, all right, is your energy off, or do you require things that are very safe? Number one, there's no side effects to these things, and can actually reestablish this sort of harmony within the body without actually having to do too much. You're just sitting in the fields, right? Red light therapy, you're
mm,
just sitting there and you're absorbing these frequencies, and you're suddenly getting biochemical reactions happening because of it. So it's really a great tool, I would say, for doing it. And it is true that the biohackers love it because they could use
Mm.
it. You could use these safely at home as well. We're just incorporating it in a clinical setting along with all those things and the procedures and more invasive things as well. So the combination works very synergistically. And that's what we've seen and be able to apply with a lot of these interesting therapies that other medical offices just aren't using.
When you're using something like energy medicine, is this truly like in response to a condition, meaning that this is the tool that you're treating the condition with? Or is it more like this is prevention, or is this like a foundational component of just getting the terrain ready to take treatment?
It's a little bit of all of that,
Okay.
Cash, because the truth of the matter is you have to provide the right terrain for certain things. So let's say you have an infection. If you don't clean the terrain, even something like antibiotic, or you can use natural antimicrobials, just won't
Mm.
work as well. You have a dirty home, you can't just set out rat traps and expect the rats
Right.
to leave when there's garbage everywhere. They'll keep coming back. I live in New York City. I know all about it. They've set millions of rat traps over decades, and we still have. So you go down the
Yeah.
subways, it's like Splinter down there. They're getting bigger and bigger. They're like, they're stealing food from people. Like it's bad.
Yeah.
And so unless you really cleaned it up, let's say the terrain, but it's underground, there's
Yeah.
garbage everywhere. Like, it doesn't matter how many traps you set, how many antibiotics, let's say, are the equivalent of a
Mm.
trap. Um, you got to change the terrain itself. So much of what we talk about is like, all right, removing toxicity, changing the terrain, getting the kind of environment in harmony. So all these pieces do that, and then you could actually go in with whether it's antibiotics. We don't do it too much there, if at all, or even natural ways of anti pathogenic type things, and it becomes a much easier job when you have a clean environment. So a lot of these tools are really that establishing the right environment, not just on this larger level of looking at the inner milieu, even on this very small cellular and atomic level of everything's working and coordinated. And then it's easier to actually give you a treatment program that lasts. So everything's together, everything's incredibly personalized and tailored. No two programs of treatment are alike because we don't believe in those set protocols. We're not trying to treat
Mm.
your diagnosis. We're trying to treat you who has the diagnosis, and the diagnosis is just a description of what's going on. What
Yeah.
led you to there is really what matters more.
Yeah, I like that. It's a description. It's like, here, how do we, what do we call this thing, as opposed to what it actually is. And when I think about
Yeah.
walking into your clinic from your, like, on the other side, being part of your team, it seems so complex. Like, there's over 100 potential treatments, and they're all the way from something I pulled from a shaman to something I pulled from pharma. And like that algorithm that must be floating around in your head somewhere, you know, how do you get this out to the masses and scale this information and knowledge?
It's not easy, Cash. I mean, this has been my like whole conflict and challenge as an entrepreneur that wants to scale and see like reach more people, because I've witnessed I grew up around this in a sense. My father started getting into more of this, all right, outside of conventional, what can I do? And he started traveling in the 80s when I was born,
Mm.
basically. And I traveled the world with him as he learned from all these experts and masters and doctors about, hey, what else can I put in my
Mm.
toolkit here? Let me learn it. Like, teach me. And then he did that, and he got better and better results because of that. But it is an art form. I think the way that you're able to, give this to more and more people is, number one, create more artists.
Yeah.
So we do put a very big focus on training anyone that works with us, from the nurse
Mm.
to the administrative staff, everyone. You got to learn these 100 things. Maybe each one is a little bit different where you want to go. So more of these sets of actual therapies are what you will be learning. We bring people on, go through training courses, a lot of shadowing and everything like that. But I think beyond that, when you look at the future, I think you have to start to go to, all right, how do we prevent,
Yeah.
more and more people from becoming chronically ill? It's a really hard thing to take someone who's in a late degenerative condition that is complex, chronic, and then restore them back to health, in, even a year, I'd say. Like, that kind of stuff takes time, a lot of effort, and that's really hard. And you do need the artistry and the very tailored and all right, which one is which, how do we do this? But when you start to look at, all right, what about
Mm.
prevention? I think then you look at the patterns. Like I said, there's always a pattern of, hey, there's a lot of people with toxicity walking around. Like we live in a toxic world. Let's be honest,
Mm-hmm.
from the glyphosate to the EMFs to, just air pollution, all of this is getting in our bodies and we're overwhelmed by it. So, how do we start to do that within the patterns of detoxification with IVs, glutathione things, other things you could do to really help the organs of elimination keep up with what we already have produced in our world? And we won't ever, I think, truly get away from it at this point, but we could absolutely support ourselves to deal with it and be in a healthy case. And then looking at the other patterns, whether those are emotional patterns, like what are the things we could do there beyond even psychotherapy, looking at ways to kind of address in biofeedback and other things, how your stress response is, and keep you in a more, I would say, parasympathetic state instead of sympathetic state where we get
Mm.
overwhelmed. We're in the fight or flight reaction. And so that's where I'm kind of looking at is what are the patterns we've seen about with some of the most complex cases? How can we back that up into prevention and wellness? How can we provide that to the masses? And hopefully in the future, as we continue to evolve, we'll see less and less
Mm.
chronic disease that requires such intense artistry, type of
Yeah.
skilled craftsmanship to address, and move it towards the, hey, how do we make this more of an affordable preventive care, true prevention? Because right now in conventional medicine it's kind of like this early prevention is just early detection. You're already
Yeah.
sick somewhat, but we're going to try and do it, before stage
Yeah.
4, stage 1 or 2
Yeah.
cancer. You still have cancer. That's still very hard to treat in many ways. So I think that's the way medicine needs to move to, especially this type of medicine. I think you'll always have artists, just as you do in most types of
Mm-hmm.
industries. And you'll have people that want to go after that artistry and put in the time and effort to really learn it. But I think on a whole, you can start to really focus on how do we prevent these things from ever happening and living longer and healthier. It's the reason I love biohacking as well. And I'd love to bridge that gap is because biohackers want to
Yeah.
live kind of forever, sort of thing. They want to optimize their health. That's what we should all be striving for, because the other alternative is what we wait till we get sick. Sickness is a very bad place to be. I've met billionaires and people that you think are the happiest people. If they have a chronic illness, they give it
Yeah.
all up just to have their health back. So it's incredibly important.
Are you finding, just because you mentioned the toxic load and burden is so extreme now, I've been hearing this from others. I'm wondering if you've seen the same, especially since you're in New York, amongst all the smog and pollution. You know, have you
Yeah.
seen the same phenomenon where there's more and more young people that are having complex issues that are needing this type of support? Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the kind of shocking thing I've seen. I sit here in the clinic. Again, I'm not the doctor, but I love to be involved. I'm here right now. I go downstairs, I meet
Right.
people. I just am attracted to hear the
Mm-hmm.
stories of these people. And yes, in the past, I've been doing this for over 20 years in this industry and followed my father, the whole time. It was that, all right, those really complex conditions are usually aging
Mm.
population. They reach a certain point, become that. Within the last decade or so, you've seen people that walk in and say, "Are you here? Like, is your parent around here or something?" It's like, "No, I'm here for it."
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, "Oh wow, like you don't even look that sick to me." And if I saw you on the street, I'd be like, "Oh wow, you look pretty healthy." But they are complex chronic conditions
Mm.
already in the 20s, even in the teens somehow, and it's it's alarming because you're like, where's this going? This
Yeah.
trend, meaning we're gonna be, and if these people can't figure it out, or if conventional medicine just gives them the option or cut it out kind of thing that we've been going with, you got a long life ahead of you of
Mm.
suffering. You got a long life of just managing, but flare ups, maybe going to the hospital once or twice a year for a serious thing, and slowly degrading. So the quality of life for a long period of time will be very, very
Mm.
low. And that's really startling to me, that younger and younger people are getting chronic conditions, are getting cancer, are getting
Yeah.
chronic fatigue syndrome, these POTS, other things that are just mysterious and incurable. But I completely agree with you, Kat, that the trends are you're younger and younger, you're more toxic for sure. Body's just not able to compensate and keep you like that for long. And so you get sicker
And
quicker.
what we're seeing when we hear about this from some of the clinics we work with, it's more so in young women than it is in young men. I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
hormone disruption going on. That's people are it's outside of their awareness,
Yeah.
or they don't know that the things that they're exposed to are mimicking estrogens as they enter their body and causing all these anxiety issues. I think the CDC just recently said that 1 in 3 teenage girls in the United States has now contemplated suicide at some point, which is shocking. Like, who
Yeah.
would think it's anywhere near that
Yeah.
number, you know?
No, you wouldn't think that, Cash, and you know that's a heartbreaking kind of statistic to hear. But the truth of the matter is, you're right. Look around, and basically, so much we put in and on our body are endocrine
Mm,
disruptors. And women, as we know, hormones are incredibly important to a woman. They are for a man as well. But even this, I was looking into, I've always researched this on
right.
sunscreens and what we put on our bodies and what we're told to, right? And there was oxybenzone, which was big for a while. And, the research is just catching up, possible carcinogen, all these things. So, it got to that level where the bigger companies, the Johnson & Johnson, everything else had to
Yeah.
switch. And now you look at the top ones that are oxybenzone free and promoted at CVS and everything, and they must be safe. Avobenzone,
Right.
right? And so you just switch the chemical composition a little bit, and you look at, all right, what's the study say about that? What's the limited data, because it's
Yeah.
newer, say about that? Endocrine disruptor, lowering testosterone, these things. So I think it impacts women at first more, but I think you're also going to see low T is a very common
Mm,
thing. And this is directly, correlated, showing that it blocks testosterone production.
mm.
There are a few studies even going back to 2017. And the FDA admitted knows since 2019 this enters the bloodstream even after one application to levels that are beyond what we see as the threshold as normal and safe. And yet it's allowed, and everyone's like, yeah, you got to use,
Yeah.
sunscreen in the sun. You're out in the sun, you got to lather it on, spray it on. And I sit there and just like, wow, this, we are told to spray on endocrine disrupting harmful chemicals that we don't even know yet the true, length of what they do when inside the body.
Yeah.
They've only begun to be studied.
Yeah.
So that's a scary thing, and I think that absolutely impacts women more at first, and then later down the line, the men sort of are witnessing as well with these things called low T, which take a little bit, I think, more time to really impact the
Yeah.
person.
We're seeing, and the way you described it really adds up in terms of what we're seeing, because we're seeing that the young teenage woman is all of a sudden her life is shifting, anxiety, mood issues, hormone
Yep.
issues, and then we're seeing the sort of 30-year-old male. That's when it's starting because it's taking a little longer, right? You're more
Yep.
androgenized, and so that 30-year-old, we're just seeing so much more of, hey, I need to get my DNA understood because I have this crazy anxiety. I can't go to work anymore. And it's like a 30-ish year old
Yeah.
male that can't understand why he's not feeling right. So it's the exact same problem. It's just expressing a little bit later for the young men, but it's unfortunate. And I would guess also that given the nature of the work that you do and how you guys can truly solve problems that others aren't solving, you're probably getting a lot of strange cancers and unique conditions based on the current long haul reality we're in, right? And the post jab reality. So
Yeah.
I don't know what you've seen there, but up here we're seeing a lot of complex cancers, a lot of complex chronic conditions that patients are being told are genetic, meaning that that it's something that's innate, that's going to happen, and that's the answer. So I don't know what you're seeing down there.
I'd love to flip this back and again ask you how you feel about it from that DNA standpoint as the owner, because that's really interesting as well. Listen, we've seen a ton of, I think complex conditions come in through, and you could look at it so many different ways. I'm not going to pinpoint it to any one thing through this pandemic. There was just, so many
Yeah.
factors of the emotional loneliness and trauma of that. I think disconnection, all these other things, more toxic things happening, and the jab himself and everything around that, the stigmatization we've done, and the kind of general discourse of divisiveness we
Mm.
have, and so much stress around that. So people are coming in, mentally completely off, toxically off, and yeah, when I speak to, not just here, but when I even speak to colleagues around the world, it's kind of like, yeah, you're seeing these kind of strange, super cancers happening where they just come on very quickly and very
Mm.
strongly. And, and you have to take it case by case because it is kind of new territory for a lot
Yeah.
of people. I think a lot of practitioners out there, in our clinic included, are seeing these and kind of got to take a step back and be able to say, okay, we got to, this isn't the normal kind of progression of things. This isn't the, oh, you have an infection, then it became this, then it slowly, transgressed into some other disease over years and
Mm.
years. It's happening at a quicker rate. And that's, listen, I think it's society and the times we live in right now. Everything happens rapidly. Like a year ago, did we even like contemplate AI being around and us asking it questions and it actually
Yeah.
answering and interacting with us? And now, like, it's just common day now. It's like, all right, yeah, we'll just ask ChatGPT what's up, and sooner or later, healthcare will be AI
Yeah.
driven in many ways because, again, if you look at it from the conventional standpoint, it's very technical. You're going with a lot of data points and then, plotting that against someone else's data points to see what is the protocol, what is the best drug, what is the newest, research say that can help this diagnosis. So of course, for me, it's like that makes sense that AI would completely push out a lot of healthcare providers and provide the help and services that conventional medicine offers right now through AI. So everything is rapidly changing in this world, as are diseases. I think human bodies and our ability to adapt changes as well, and that throws us off. Change is difficult for the human body, and as we become less adaptable as well, that's kind of Darwinism. It wasn't survival of the fittest that he really stated. It was survival through
Mm.
adaptivity. That is, it's not strongest and everything. It's those that are able to adapt to change
Yeah.
are the ones that survive. And given that we've kind of produced a place where through the pandemic, it's like we were kind of confined and not allowed to change in some ways, and then change hit us
Mm.
anyway. I think it changed drastically the scenery of disease and the progression of disease. But from a genetic standpoint, now let me toss it back to you, and what you're seeing from, everything you do at the DNA company. Are you seeing that, you're seeing these rapid kind of progressions of disease? How is that
Yeah.
showing or expressing itself on the genetic
So,
side?
firstly, what you said about which most people aren't considering, that it's so multifactorial. It's not just, illness, jab. It's more, yes, the solitude, the emotional component, the stress, the pressure, the stigmatism over which side of the fence you're on, all of that stuff. There was so many additional loads that the total threshold, if you add it all up, was too much, right? On top of this foundation of either virus or something else, which both deliver you a toxin, right? So that combination is a lot, and there's some people that at the cognitive level can handle it. They clear their neurochemicals fast. They don't bind onto trauma. They don't give things a lot of meaning, and so they plow through these types of things, and they have that warrior spirit about them. And then there's some people that don't, and there's much more people that don't than do. It's harder to find that warrior meant in terms of neurochemical uh, mapping, and so that load, that burden is huge. On top of most of us aren't walking around genetically with the best endothelial capacity. We're not wired for our
Mm,
current input of toxic burden. Most of us don't have a perfect hormone profile, and so there's already inflammatory insults, especially for women coming from estrogen metabolites, right? A lot of us don't have. I would also use the word most. Most of us aren't walking around with the best detox or anti-inflammatory or antioxidative pathways, and so the mitochondria is already struggling.
hmm
So you take all these pieces and add it all together. There's more than a perfect storm, right? And I mean, you know better than most that it's all the mitochondria is key to this, right? It's a mitochondrial disease, and we aren't functioning there, and we're already overburdened, And so no surprise that you're getting these outcomes. Now, in terms of those rare cancers we're seeing, we have for the first time ever the average life expectancy in the United States dropped by 3 years. Right, a few months. It was, I don't know what it was, 78 or 79 or something, and a 3 year drop, I think, to 76. A couple month drop would have been a giant red flag that the CDC should have been all over, saying like, what just happened to our population? When it's been incrementally increasing over time, and all of a sudden a 3 year drop. And that 3 year drop isn't because people are dying younger, like the 78-year-old is now dying at 75. No, it's because young people are dying, and it's skewing the data.
Yes.
Right, and it's a big, massive tug on the data because young people are dying because of exactly what you described, those complex cancers and complex conditions that there's no protocol what to do with it. This is not how these diseases present themselves normally. And why is this happening? What is cancer? Too much inflammation, no immune response, right? You need your immune, cancer's constantly developing, constantly being fought. Your immune system's constantly doing this for you. Too much inflammation, it's going to flourish. You have a protein that's causing inflammation, and you have something else that wiped out your immune system. And so all these things that normally would have been fought are flourishing. And so what looks like a rare cancer is not a rare cancer. It's all the things that your body normally is fighting just surviving. And the combination that looks like, oh, why did I get these 6 locations all at the same time? That's not normally how this thing presents, because this is not normal, right? This is something very different. The context has changed.
Yep.
And that's what we've seen. So definitely genetically we can somewhat predict, who may be better off or worse off, but everybody needs help. And that's why I'm thinking that they're coming to you like, how do I deal with this? And, regular MD doesn't have an answer.
It's a complex world out there right now, and like you said, our genetic capabilities and predispositions provide so much, but the drastic change of environment within them,
Yeah.
the epigenetic side just trigger them all. It's like, we're just switching on those genes that whatever it is that allow for things to go bad. So this is why I do feel that genetically we really truly do have to understand what we come into this world predisposed as.
Yeah.
Where our weaknesses are, and to work on those, and to avoid the things that will absolutely trigger certain things into disease. But when you live in such a complex world where it's almost like the triggers just like being thrown at you one after the other,
Yeah.
you're playing this video game in like super speed and dodging all these things. It's hard,
Yeah.
it's really, really difficult. And that's why I do find it like we all need a little bit of support. We all do need to truly understand ourselves,
Yeah.
both on the genetic level as well as just on this, I think, spiritual
Mm-hmm.
level. It's important for us to have that purpose in life that allows us to strive and work hard and do these things that we have to, because I saw this article even earlier today about how technology will help us, right, to achieve so much in healthcare and rehumanize it and everything and make it easy. It's like, well, it's not easy. Look at everything out there we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about. It's not exactly easy to stay super healthy these days. You have to put
Yeah.
in work, time, effort. You need to prioritize it. I understand at the end of a long day, most people are very tired. But if you're not cooking, you just go straight to the fast food. That is not a healthy
Mm.
choice. And so it's really important we start to prioritize these things to get ahead and actually keep ourselves in the game in a sense so that we don't become overwhelmed by all this. And so understanding our predispositions through genetic analysis is a wonderful tool in that way, as is the kind of preventive element of it, to be able to say, what can I do to help myself
Yeah.
here? You talk about the kind of onslaught on mitochondria and the energy we're wasting. That's something, we looked at and it's just like, yeah, we got to support the mitochondria any way we can, and do things, get out in the sun, that even helps. But take supplements, do this and that. I used to be against this idea that everyone needed supplements. I was like, supplements are
Yeah.
supplemental to your diet. Now I've changed my tune. I've talked to enough people, like our soil is depleted, our diets aren't as good and nutritious. We have so many toxins that are depleting us every single
Yeah.
day. So I'm kind of on this boat of like, I think we all need supplements now.
Yeah, you're so that analogy is I couldn't make it any better, but it's we're playing a different game now. If you think of it digitally, it's no
Yeah.
longer Super Mario Brothers. It's like take that to 2023. You're still thinking of the 1980s version of it, right?
Yes.
And that's our challenge is we're thinking
Yeah.
about what we saw our parents do, which was appropriate for that time, right? The 1970s is
Yes.
really when chemicals and foods started to flourish in the way they are today, right? Where we became heavily industrialized. So it took a couple of decades for that to settle in, and now we live in that reality. That is the reality. So it's not our parents or grandparents' reality. It's very different. So we have to have different habits around that. And speaking of supplementation, you did something really cool, which is you went back into all of what you do to support people, and you kind of looked at here's what's working, and here's the mechanism of why it works. So what's actually going on in biology? What changed, and why does this person feel better? And then you then put it all together and created a supplement, which is really cool. And,
Yeah.
and you, it's this. How do I going back to that question I asked you earlier? How do you scale this stuff? Well, maybe they don't have access to everything, but you're saying I've cherry picked the best of what I've learned and I've formulated based on your personal experience of solving people's problems. Here's what you need to maintain that innate cellular health. So what did you figure out there? Like what did you put together?
Yeah, it was really like years and years in the making of sorts. Me and my father discussing this and analyzing all the tools we had and what was, really making an impact on people. And one of the things, even before it became big in the world, was this compound NAD, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, that is used in every single cell. It's as important as oxygen, really, in fueling the cell, the mitochondria of each cell, and of course, the brain uses 20% of all energy. So a lot of use of NAD within the brain itself. And we said, all right, lowest hanging fruit, if you were to take something out of this clinic, out of the
Yeah.
100 plus things that are impacting people, and be able to provide it to them in some way that they could just use it at home in, a safe manner, what would that be? And so we were just like, hey, this NAD, when you put it in people's IVs and you get it into them directly, boom, it's like a rewiring of the
Mm.
brain. You get energy, people feel really good. You'll hear about this. It's the reason it's so popular right now. Like, we've been doing this for a long time, but now, there's patches, everything. I see every day new ads, someone
Yeah.
reaches out, what do you think of this thing, what do you think of this? Or it's gotten almost too far where it's like saturated, and I think quality is going down. It's just gimmicky almost. But 5-10 years ago or so, when we were looking at it, really was so
Mm.
impactful. People that had brain fog, like loss of concentration, Parkinsonism, dementia, all these things that were coming in, when they utilized these IVs, they were
Mm.
improving, greatly improving in some cases. So we started off clinically, like, all right, what does that look like orally? Can it be done? Can it be bioavailable? What do you combine it with? Because we weren't just looking at this, hey, let's just take this ingredient, throw it in a capsule, and throw it at people and market
Yeah.
it. It really was about, all right, what's going to work to truly deliver it in a sense. We understand the challenges of bioavailability
Yeah.
as anything orally should be looked at. And how do you combine that with other ingredients, with botanicals like bacopa, that's no, or cat's claw for inflammation, and do it in the right synergistic manner. So even the coenzyme Q10 versus NAD is in a 3-to-1 ratio in a sense, and that's been shown to help with energy production within the cell, everything else, as two coenzymes working together that way. So, after years of kind of feasibility, looking at what it was, what's going on in the IVs, how could you try and do that orally? We were able to come up with this product called Nadovim that does that. That's able to deliver pure NAD along with 8 other ingredients, so a total 9, that work synergistically to not just help the mitochondria as a whole, where most NAD supplements are saying this is
Mm.
cellular health, everything like that, but really go after that one organ we felt is the organ that makes us human, the organ that we need so much in this day and age, the brain.
Mm.
We live in an information age where we need to process so much information, and our brains are so drained. And you look at what happens out of that. The loss of memory, the brain fog, the kind of confusion and everything we go through, or just mental exhaustion. And so we created this product based on that, saying, hey, this is our lowest hanging fruit at the clinic. If we could get this done, And we were able to. And at first, we spent a year just applying it within a clinical setting with other doctors' offices that we knew of and colleagues and everything. And they were saying, hey, this is great. I gave it to my Parkinsonism patient, no other changes in their program of treatment, and their tremors were
Mm,
reduced, gait improved, all these things improved. And it's not, we didn't get rid of it. It's not a miracle. We understand that it's an oral
mm.
supplement, but there was really great results with it, and we were really proud of that. So, we still provide that. We're looking to do more as well. We're looking to see what technology we have in here that we can give. But that was the initiation point for being able to say, hey, we understand not everyone could come to our
Yeah.
clinic, not everyone could benefit, but how do we do this to give this back and help people reclaim focus, concentration, their brain, and feel good again, and to get some extra energy out of it. So that was our initial product,
Yeah,
Nadovim.
I've looked at the formulation, and people have to rethink what supplements mean. Like grandparents' generation was like, "Hey, take my multivitamin. Let me get a little extra kick, a little
Yeah,
boost." It truly was a supplement. Like I've got what I need, and I'm gonna add a little bit, and this is my health plan. Now it's like you need to be arming your body with the defenses it needs to live in this current reality. You need to be fighting back. It's a very different need, right? And the need is at the cellular level. But if you don't have your mitochondria efficient, we're talking about aging. We're talking about brain, heart, like everything falls apart if the mitochondria is not firing properly. And this formula you've got really supports sort of cellular health, slows down aging, all that good stuff, right? So people have to really consider what does their daily regimen look like, and if you're not doing something to support sort of anti-inflammatory detox, cellular health, a combination of all those things, potentially hormones for women, you're probably not going to feel the best, and you will be like that 30-year-old kid that's saying he's got anxiety issues, or the 15-year-old girl who's depressed when she really doesn't need to be. It's the total load that's getting her there, not it's not innate. It's not part of who she is. And it's anyways. So you've done a great job there. So we'll share that with everybody.
If you want to keep diving deeper with your prescription for life with the Unpilled podcast, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. I've also written my first book, The DNA Way: Unlock the Secrets of Your Genes to Reverse Disease, Slow Aging, and Achieve Optimal Wellness. Take a look and enjoy, guys.
So what if somebody walks into your clinic? What would you say for someone that's just getting started? Integrative medicine, biohacking, whatever. Where's the entry point where it's like, here's where you get going if you've done nothing. Here's where you need to focus first. Because it can be overwhelming, right? Where does somebody? What's the first step?
I always say the first step is really taking a step back and looking, like you say, your daily habits, your daily choices, everything like that. We can make profound changes in our lives with the fundamentals of what we choose to do every day, how we start our day. Do we start our day checking our phone, stress, eating
Mm.
poorly, getting a donut and all these things, or do we start it meditating? Do we start it with gratitude, with some hydration of good quality water? Those are the foundationals. Even looking at the night before, how you started. Did you sleep well?
Mm-hmm.
Did you go to sleep at the right time? Did you again turn off all things and practice sleep hygiene and all these things? But that those are the fundamentals. We always say without those, we're not going to do too
Yeah.
much. We could give you all the treatments in the world and actually catalyze you into a good place. But your choices after you leave here will just bring you back to a
Yeah.
set point that you started out, because that's usually what got you in trouble in the first place. So I usually like to tell people that, take the time to really analyze what you're doing on a daily basis and improve those things. Of course, if you're already in a state of dysfunction and chronic disease, it's sometimes hard. You may not even have the vitality to do some of the things such as exercise and the good lifestyle changes that you can do when you have your health. Uh, and then it's a combination. It's a combination. Okay, let's look under the hood when you get here. Let's look at it from numerous ways, not just the biochemical way, but HRV analysis, bioresonance analysis. Let's look at it in different prisms and kind of see what is really going on with you. Because as much as you may have that diagnosis, we're not too concerned.
Mm.
That's great. It's nice to know that you have that diagnosis, but what is causing that
Yeah.
diagnosis to persist? What is causing you that your body can't get back into self management, self healing? which is what we always do every single day.
Mm.
It's the analogy. You get a paper cut, you don't got to do anything. Your body's
Yeah.
healing. But imagine you get a paper cut and it just sits there and it festers. It keeps bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. You're not healing. You need help then, right? So if you're at that stage where you need help, we could absolutely catalyze that. But I think the biggest thing, Cash, that people need to understand is we only act as coaches in this whole thing. You are still the one that needs to do the work at the end of the day. Unlike conventional medicine that says, keep eating that way, keep doing this, and just take this pill. You'll be good. And when this pill doesn't work, we'll up it and give you a new pill. And then we'll cut something out. And then we'll give you a pill for that. It's like, this is drastically different. And this is why I still think some people are not ready. They come in and they say, okay, help me. It's like, well, we will help you, but you need to help yourself also. You need to make changes. True healing is so transitional. It's transmutational in a sense, because you start somewhere. You're going to have to change yourself to get the healing part down. We will take you so far, but we actually do say at a certain point, it's on you. It's like, you got to fly out of here, little bird, and take the rest of this. You need to spread those wings, because we will get you. But unless you make the change yourself at the end, you will find yourself back where you were. And that is, you know, the hard reality for a lot of people is you're going to have to do the work. You could get a trainer in the gym and he could, you know, spot you and do everything, but you got to do the work. He can't be lifting the weights and you expect to get bigger, right? And on top of that, just like in the gym, there will be some pain. There will be hard days. There will be days where you don't want to do it, but you just have to, in a sense, because your life kind of depends on it. This is your health, right? And that's what people need to realize. Like, my biggest message is not one of like the medicine, this is the one thing that'll solve everything. It's that we need to prioritize health. Without it, we have nothing. And this idea that we could just keep coasting on and, you know, eating poorly and stressing and not caring as much and just, you know, sitting indoors all day and taking pills, that is not the way. We are already at like a tipping point. I'm seeing, I'm sure you're seeing it as well, that we need a change. And I think that starts with ourselves, just to be like, hey, I'm going to prioritize health today. And it's just one little thing at a time. Take the small win approach. You know, start the day and put your phone aside and just do 5 minutes of breathing. You know, then the next day add a cup of water with it, good water, maybe some lemon water or something, and then go on from there. And you'll see the patterns going the right way. You'll feel better. You'll look better. You know, so I you know, that's what I always try and preach myself. If you prioritize health and if you need the help, we are here. But again, at the end of the day, it really rests on the person to take that ownership responsibility. And that gives you the power to actually lift yourself up, regain your health, and actually optimize your health and well-being.
Yeah, I think you're right on. We've seen that over and over. And it's like, it also becomes permanent. It's no longer you supporting them. You're teaching them how to fish, right? And all of a sudden, it becomes identity change, new version of themselves. And that is healthcare. Healthcare is teach me how to maintain what I have, my God-given health that I was born with. Don't let anything take it away from me. That's an amazing outcome. So with that, I'm still going to call you Dr. Caspar, because I think you know, if I had to go to a doctor, that's what I all of what I've heard today is what I was hoping I would get, which I haven't been able to find. And I'm sure a lot of clinicians are listening saying, yeah, I need to learn some of this. So thank you. So first of all, thanks for joining us. This was awesome. You know, a little peek into integrative medicine and what we could do.
My pleasure.
But thanks again. This is a great, man.